But before I start, first and foremost, let me thank Rajesh Jha and Padma Kumar and Wing Commander Nair for having me here today. Thank you very much. I also want to thank Balagopal and Smita Sharma, primarily because they have been donors to Pallium India. So thank you from Federal Bank and University. Really appreciate what you do for us at Pallium. Pallium India is an organization which does palliative care, and it's been in 20 years in existence in Trivandrum. We do education and facilitation across the country as well in palliative care. And when I was told about this topic by Jha, and I realized that how important it is to have this responsible business concept, because for the last 30 plus years, been in the for-profit world and really realized how much we are missing out in the other areas for the society. And that sort of brings me to the concept that this 3 S's, which is surplus, society and sustainability, how these 3 things could come together for the enrichment of all of us here. And there's something the businesses today have learned in some form, at least in the IT industry. And that is when the US or the Western world sneezes, the Indian companies get a cold. At least they've realized that we are all connected in some form. And therefore, what happens here in India can affect somewhere else in Africa. What happens in Australia can affect in the US. So there is a realization that we are in it together. We have to be responsible as a businesses, just not for the surplus. It's also for the society and for the planet Earth as a whole. But I'm not going to take too much time on this because the eminent panelists here are going to speak about it. And my role is primarily to ensure that they keep time. So when I tell you that time is up, I'm not being rude. I'm just being sensitive to the fact that all of us are a deadline here to meet, and in respect to all everybody's time here. So with those words, let me introduce Balagopal, who's also known to us as Baletan. Where do I start? I mean, he's got such an illustrious career. So let me start from what he's told me, and I'm going to start from the bottom of what he gave me as his profile. He's written 4 books. So obviously, he's an author, and therefore he can speak very well. And I can tell you that it's not easy to win an argument with him, because he has such difference of opinion, and they can convince you that his opinion is right. So I'm really looking forward to an interesting session here from him. He's of course the chairman of the on the board of Federal Bank, so that's a huge responsibility he carries there. He's also on the governing body of the Center for Management Development, advisory board for the Fourth Way Foundation, member of the board of TIM and Medical Devices Incubator of SCT IMST, and the advisory board of IIT Palakkad. Of course, he started as an IAS officer and then shifted there and became an entrepreneur, a successful entrepreneur at that. So he has a lot of stories which is there for him, which he can talk about. And Baleta, over to you.
Good afternoon. The theme of the session is a new era of responsible business. Now, this can be interpreted and dealt with in broad terms, and then the whole discussion can be about social responsibility, about CSR, about ethics in business, etc. Now all this will come up, but how I propose to deal with this in a far more restrictive definition of the understanding of this, a new era of responsible business. By responsible business, I mean businesses operating in a way which is different from the way they have operated so far, and which will cause much less harm than the business systems which have prevailed so far have actually accomplished. The evidence is there. Even climate change deniers will admit the fact that if you look at the legacy issues in terms of all the carbon emissions which have already happened, which are already part of the environment, any mitigation steps which are going to be taken now, while absolutely necessary, nevertheless, the consequences of the actions which have been taken till date, we are going to live with that, with those consequences for a very long time. So let us not fool ourselves that if we install a few solar panels on the roof and replace our internal combustion engine vehicle with a EV, all will be well. It's unfortunately, I wish I could give that assurance, but I think that is not going to happen. We are going to be living with the consequences of profligacy and a particular approach to business which has been celebrated and even has formed, has been enshrined in the best known business schools and taught to generations of people as the way to operate, you know, and given euphemistic terms like optimization and shareholder value and things like that. So we'll need to we'll need all this to change. Before I just go on to, I have 4 or 5 slides only. Before I go to them, I just want to make some opening remarks which will give you an idea of where I'm coming from in this presentation and where I'm trying to go. Some sort of wry observations to say that there have been some wild thoughts here, okay? And those who know me will not be surprised, and those who don't know me, please forgive me for this. Our heart keeps beating without knowing what is life. We in our infinite need to keep it beating, desperately continue building and breaking models. We have, each of us have one heart, but there are many models, and the whole science of medicine and healthcare, etc., has grown up trying to keep this heart from stopping to beat. When we are hungry, we eat. When tired, we sleep. Our neurons know nothing of economics. But then we build models on how to analyze the price of the food we eat or the amount of sleep we take based on larger and larger data and all kinds of assumptions. We use models to explain how nations go to war or how to deal with unemployment, but it still does not explain how some win against exceptional odds and others lose. But still, this analysis, this analytical frame of mind which we have, gives us concepts and labels like markets and growth. Soon we forget that these are just concepts which we created, and we pin everything onto them. And that brings me to one of the central points is growth is something which has possessed us. Now it is influencing our behavior and setting our directions. Ask any child what the country needs, and the answer would be growth and development. Nobody pauses to ask, why this growth? Why does this country or this economy or this company or this factory have to keep growing? To grow means to become bigger than what it was before. Try saying that aloud a couple of times. Growth means bigger than what was before. We will then realize the danger we have unleashed. In nature, we see growth, stability, and then decay. The initial growth phase brings us to a stable structure which sustains over a period. Then it slowly fades. We accept growth and stability, but we try to avoid the decay and the fading away that follows. Growth and this obsession and this drive for growth counters this fear of decay and death and brings in the hope, in my opinion, the false hope of permanence. In an environment, in a solar system, and in fact in a cosmos, where every process is cyclical, involving development, stabilization, and then decay, here we have a miracle. The business organization, we believe in our foolishness, is exempt from these laws and will grow forever. In a universe where there is not a single linear phenomenon, we believe we have discovered the one exception to the universal rule, which is business will grow in a linear fashion. Growth needs resource. When there is not enough water at home, we all take turns and agree on some rules regarding consumption. When one feels that person needs a bit more and tries pushing that agenda, then all hell breaks loose. Wars happen when one of us decides that that person is above the rules. Bullies start war. Bullies who believe in their growth at the expense of others. There will always be growth, stability, and decay. And business organizations, to meet this threat and to enable us to, in a more responsible fashion, create our better responses towards the planet, towards this 3 Ps, people, planet, and profit, than the kind of job we have been doing so far. So in other words, organizations should strive to balance things. So the theme which I'm trying to say is, you will see as we go along, I'm trying to take attention away from this notion that there are some green products or green businesses which we can get into, while we remain the same business person, the same optimizer, the same person trying to maximize shareholder value, and in other words, the same Balagopal, but I buy a EV or I go and plant some trees and everything is fine. I need not change my behavior at all. So I'm trying to say that is not workable. That is not foolish. That is foolish. We have to change the way we think, the way we work. The first notion which I want to leave you with is we have this feeling of growth. The first binary which we should get out of our mind is that we can either grow as an organization or we can have a positive environmental impact. We can't do both. We can't function as a business organization, and that is, is there a way of functioning? No. We are given this notion that this is a zero-sum game. If you want one, you cannot have the other. So I'll just give a couple of examples. Patagonia is an outdoor clothing company based in California. The company is known for its high-quality outdoor clothing and gear. In the early 1990s, the company began implementing a number of initiatives to reduce its environmental impact, including using recycled materials, conserving water, and offsetting carbon emissions. In order to prioritize sustainability, Patagonia has intentionally limited its growth and has even turned away potential customers who who could not align with the company's values. The company said, fine, we respect your choice, but we cannot change. We are not going to vote for growth. Patagonia has made a commitment to use recycled materials in all its products, including recycled polyester, recycled nylon, and recycled cotton. In fact, the company has developed a program called Worn Wear, which allows customers to repair, reuse, or recycle their Patagonia products. And the company helps them to do that. This company realizes business is not only about selling new things. So business has to change, isn't it? The environment is out there. Here is one company which has said the problem is in us. It's not out there. And if we don't change, how is our impact not going to change? So the company has consciously taken this thing and is no longer seeing it as a binary of this, and is saying that, of course, it understands one thing, that if you're going to minimize your environmental impact, you will have to make trade-offs, you will have to make sacrifice of growth. And Patagonia was willing to do that. The second choice is goals versus operations. I think all of you are in business, so you'll all be familiar. Organizations focus on impact goals and vision statements. Integrating sustainability mindset into operations means structuring in detail the metrics, the measurement, etc. Now, in some cases, they will even provision the additional budget, though I usually find that rare, because management is fine with all these statements. Yes, we must be friendly to the environment, etc. Except when they come down to that column, which is what is that impact on the top line and what is the impact on the bottom line. And then when they see the bad news, then suddenly all these noble vision statements and mission statements no longer look as great as they looked 5 minutes earlier. So, however, what I want to show is with an example that it need not be goals versus operations. You can have operations aligned to goals. And I'll just give a couple of examples. Unilever, global giant, has made sustainability a key part of its business strategy. In 2010, the company set a goal to double its business while reducing its environmental impact. To achieve this goal, Unilever made a number of changes to its operations. So again, I want to bring back the focus to, we can't change things unless we change ourselves. Unilever had to change itself. Unilever did not go hunting for some holy grail of some electric vehicle or windmills or solar panels which you stick on top of the roof and then continue doing business just like as usual. Unilever realized, no, that is not going to change anything. They have to change. Their business has to change. So, for example, some of the things which they did was commitment to sourcing 100% of electricity which they use from renewable sources, and has invested in a number of renewable energy projects. Their business is not renewable energy, but they did that because they said, how else can we walk the talk? Including wind and solar farms. They implemented initiatives to reduce their water usage, including investing in water-saving technologies such as drip irrigation systems and supporting water conservation projects in communities around the world. They introduce initiatives to source raw materials sustainably, including supporting sustainable agriculture practices and working with suppliers to reduce their environmental impact. Now look at what they did. Obviously all this costs money. To fund these sustainability initiatives, Unilever has invested a significant amount of its own resources and has also sought external funding through partnerships and investments. For example, the company has partnered with organizations such as the World Wildlife Fund and the United Nations Development Program to support sustainability projects, and has also secured funding from investors who are interested in supporting the company's sustainability goals. So it's not that easy, isn't it? You can't just look at the kind of things which a gigantic organization like Unilever has to do if it has to walk the talk. If it has to do something more than just buy something. It has all the money in the world. It could have just gone and bought something and sat back. But they were honest enough to realize that, no, we must be the change, isn't it? This is, of course, I think many of you will be familiar. I, as part of the board of a bank, understand this compliance culture. Compliance culture means what? Ticking off the boxes, isn't it? Every one of us will be saying all boxes ticked. But the problem, what we don't admit is, but the problem remains. All the boxes have been ticked, isn't it? When we gave the loan, in the loan underwriting process, all the boxes were ticked. AAA rating, this, that, everything. I'm talking from a bank's perspective. But that loan becomes an NPA. What happened? That happens. Life happens, isn't it? So in the case of this, we have to go beyond reporting and compliance. We have to go beyond that. We need to look at it from a people and planet perspective to create a unified way, of impact. So the example here is of another company which is well known to all of you, IKEA. The Swedish furniture company has made sustainability a priority in its business operations. They could easily have given a compliance report and shown that they are sustainable. Instead of that, the company has invested in research and development to find new ways to use wood more efficiently, and has also started using recycled materials in some of its products. They brought sustainability thinking into their production and products. They implemented a number of initiatives to reduce waste, including recycling programs and initiatives to design products that are easier to repair and reuse. They implemented initiatives such as water-saving faucets and showers itself. They've gone down to such detail, a giant company like that. So you can see the amount of work which is involved there when you say we are going to be sustainable in what we do. Review versus real time. As professional managers, we all love to finally to give a report on what we did, that our efforts hopefully were successful. When it matters, we need to see results real time. It's not enough after everything is over to give, essentially you are giving a post-mortem report then. We need to know this in real time so that we can calibrate our actions and see that we remain on target. It also shows how committed we are to making it happen. For example, when Siemens decided to start initiatives to improve the sustainability of their operations, they developed a number of tools and technologies that use real-time data to monitor and optimize the energy efficiency of their facilities, including sensors and analytics tools that track the energy usage of individual appliances and systems. Another example is that of Toyota, which implemented a number of initiatives to reduce its environmental impact, including improving the energy efficiency of its manufacturing processes, using sustainable materials, and investing in renewable energy sources. To achieve these goals, Toyota has carefully analyzed its processes and identified opportunities for improvement. Toyota has implemented a number of sensors and analytics tools to monitor the energy use of its facilities in real time and identify opportunities for improvement. The final choice is, the final binary which we think of is today versus tomorrow. We are taking some actions today, hoping for some results tomorrow. So there is a balance here which is required. If you notice from in all the previous slides also, the word was The word which I was trying to use was balance. So here, these are not binaries. These are not zero-sum games. We have to realize that we have choices, and there is a lot of variation. There's a lot of area in between where we can work in, and which offers us enough scope for our creativity and innovation. And we must not take a very simplistic view. So, I put some questions here. What if we decide to set aside a percentage of revenue for impact? How many of us do that? Top line, so much we are going to... I need hot water. What if we give operations an internal sustainability fund to pull out for the extra effort? Operations will say, fine, you want us to do this, but this is going to cost. Where's the money going to come from? So it has to be budgeted because it's not going to be generated by operations. What if we create a new metric for every task or process within operations so that we can measure and benchmark processes? What if we monitor real time and modify our processes rather than review the report at the end? Therefore, it need not be today versus tomorrow, but sowing the seeds of tomorrow today. I've come to the end of my time also, I think. This is an effort to not actually compress too many ideas. Though there were 4 or 5 slides, they were all essentially on the same idea. And the basic idea here is that a commitment to sustainability means a commitment to changing the way we work, changing the way we think, changing the way we operate. It is not a question of adopting this technology or that technology. Those are the next step only. We first have to make the change in our own minds. And when we do that, when we ponder about these options and alternatives, we must realize all along that it's not a zero-sum game. That it is not this versus that. It is a question of finding a balance between the two. You can't have both, but so you have to give up something to get something else. So I think our whole approach towards this question of sustainability needs to be moved away from a technology and product loaded, intensive, and heavily weighted, technology-weighted approach towards an approach which says the problem lies here within us and the solution also lies within us. And that business, the good news is that with these examples which I've shown, that business can change the way it works, can become more responsible, and can create considerable impact. Thank you.
Thank you. As I promised earlier, he does bring a different perspective, and a very important perspective, because it's the question of change of behavior to be able to achieve, to be responsible. Next panelist is Anisha Cherian. She's the managing director for Chamanur Academy, which started in 2003. She's a business graduate from Christ College, Bangalore University. Chamanur Academy is the brainchild of Anisha, and who's immensely interested in creating high energy impact training models to improve human capital productivity. She believes that with the right input and right method, focus on the core person, we can create transformative change. Her training programs focus on the core individual to increase their self-confidence and their self-esteem, and then the subject matter is easy. She's also strongly committed to social causes. She's passionate about conducting short and long-term leadership training programs for senior and mid-level managers and decision makers of companies, and also monitoring execution. She specializes in setting up simple HR systems and processes for mid-sized companies. The main focus is to monitor the execution of HR functions in relation to learning and development. Anisha, all yours. 10 minutes.
First, let me thank Trivandrum Management Association for this invitation. And I have to say that was an excellent presentation from Bala. In fact, what caught my attention was when he mentioned about the usage of the terminology growth and development. These are terms that we use, these are concepts we have made, as humans we have made these terminologies and these concepts, and then we try to live by that, we habitually repeat it, then we believe it, we spread it, and the simple aspect that he said that it needs resources. And somewhere along the way we hurt ourselves and it's a lose-lose scenario. So thank you, Bala, for putting that thought in my mind. I visited a small store in Ernakulam. It's a very cute little store, and it had a lot of, small gift items made from natural material. And once I went in, it had this really nicely done board. And on that board, these terms were written on that board: eco-friendly, sustainable, renewable, recycle, ethical practices. So these were the words that was written on that board, and there was a young chap who was sitting there. So I asked him, I told him, nice board. And then he looked at the board and he said, Madam, I have no idea what that means, but my boss said that without this we cannot sell. So basically that sums it all. Now ESG, it has become a terminology which we now continuously use. PPP, that is people, planet, and I'd like to, people, planet, prosperity. I mean, you can say people, planet, profit. But I think studies have shown that those companies that practice ESG, they do have, long-term financial gains. Now, I would like to focus more on the governance aspect of it because my background is in learning and development. And some of the points I'd like to talk about is, one is ethical standards which company has. There needs to be training at all levels. So a company can build its value systems. I mean, it can use words like integrity, transparency, all these kind of value systems. If you go into large companies, you have it on their boards. But the question is, does everybody in that organization know about these value systems? Do they understand it? Does the security guy there know what these terminologies mean? So it has to trickle down from top to bottom. It has to go to all the levels. And then we talk about transparency. I wish, we had companies where we can openly say we are 100% transparent. Is that possible? Transparent to all stakeholders, including shareholders. The fact is, transparency leads to trust. And speed of trust increases performance, it increases profitability. So we all know that, but companies need to ask ourselves, what is the percentage of transparency we follow? Now the third point I'd like to touch upon is diversity and inclusion. Now this is a topic which is very close to me. The big question I asked myself, I went on to Google and I checked, how many women are there on the company boards today? It's a big, question. And then I got some data that said that, after the 2013, there was a mandate by the MCA, which said that you have to have one woman on the company board. So at that point, it was only 6% of women who were holding director posts. 6% of women who were holding director posts. But after that mandate, it went up to 18%. The global standard is 20%. Now the simple question, why? Why is it so difficult for women to get onto company boards? Now there's a lot of data which has proven multiple times that when you have a board which has a good mix of both men and women, the decisions are better, the results are better. Even when it comes to financial performance, there is a lot of data which shows that when you have a diverse board with women also on the board, it makes a big difference. Because women bring a totally different perspective to decision making. I mean, you cannot ignore 50% of the population. But time and again, company after company, we tend to ignore. There is that 50% of population, and they are decision makers. They drive buying. They have buying power. But why does companies ignore and bring in? I mean, why don't we bring in more women into the board? Now, one aspect I noticed was, even though the nifty 500 companies in India, there are only 25 CEOs, okay? Women CEOs. So out of 500, we are talking of 25 women CEOs. If you look at the 500 Fortune companies, only 39 women CEOs. So why does that happen? Now, research has shown that companies with female CEOs are more profitable than others. Data has shown that 87% of the 2021 Fortune 500 companies with female CEOs reported above average profit. But the question is, out of the 500 companies, how many are women CEOs? Only 39. So where do we stand? And why does this happen? Why is patriarchy so strong that is preventing women to take up leadership positions? After Bala's talk, something came to my mind. Maybe we should try a new solution. Maybe we should bring in more women into leadership position. Maybe we should, shake up this whole number game. If we do the same action, we get the same results. Maybe if you bring in more women into boardrooms, women might choose different actions and you might get new results. I'm not saying better, but definitely new results. Now, few of the aspects I'd like to touch upon is in regarding to training, in regarding to company culture. Now, I mentioned before about the value systems that need to be trickled down to the security guard, to everybody in the company. But also we need to understand that the value system that we encourage or we teach our employees, okay, it has to align with the action. Now this is, from a training perspective, we always say misaligned systems and processes. And that is a huge problem. I had an experience where a very large jewelry group in the Middle East, they wanted me to, come in and train their staff. The issue was, we're talking of huge attrition levels. And the owner of the company, he was asking me, I really need help. I've not gone for a holiday for more than 10 years. The salesmen, they're always fighting with each other. I have a huge attrition. No one sticks with, this company. There's no support. There is no trust. I'm having a lot of issues. So can you help me? So then I started talking to the sales team there, asked them, got a little deeper into what the issues were. And then I understood his salaries are very low and his incentives are very high, and it's individualized incentive. So if a customer walks into the store, you've got 8 to 9 salesmen ready to pounce on that customer. So when you have individualized incentive and low salary but high incentive, for the salesman, his survival depends on getting that customer. So I went back to the owner and I said, maybe we should think about trying team incentives. Let us change the system. And then he immediately got back saying, no, this works. I make huge profit. I don't want to change the system. So this is, from a training background, this is something which we face all the time. You want to build teams, but then you create a policy of individualized incentive. So it's about misaligned systems. A cousin of mine, she has this a program which she does every single year. Now she runs this big company. She's got 700 plus staff. She's got a little bit of, like a monopoly. But anyway, I'm not getting into details about her company. But she has a company's day which it's a very well-planned function every single year. Now, she spends a lot of money on that program. It's the company's day. She's got, 700 plus staff, their families involved, celebrities come. She brings in her suppliers, vendors. So they all attend that program. So once I was just chatting with her and asked her, why do you do this program? You spend so much of money on this program. It doesn't make any financial sense to me. What is the purpose of this? And then she told me, this is her biggest HR exercise. This exercise that she does is for her staff. It is for her employees. So before this particular day, 3 months before the practice session starts, So she said, I put in my marketing team and I put my finance team together, and then they have to do a drama or a skit or a dance program. So because of that 3 months of engagement, these members are all working together, their egos are shared, they have to communicate, they have to practice together. It builds so much of bonding, and the team building exercise automatically comes. And she said, I can prove with figures, Anisha. Immediately after this program, the next 3 months, my sales peak. So she said, out of experience, okay, I'm not getting into large-scale training. I'm not bringing in consultants and paying lakhs. I'm not doing any of this. But this one day, this function that I do, and I spend lakhs on it, with figures, I will show you the kind of impact it has on my business, simply because my team is happy. And happy people sell better. So at least that is what she's proven to me. So I'd like to, talk about what are the main 5 pillars of responsible business. One is, yes, customer value, environmental footprint, quality workforce, responsible management, and strong community. And how do we become a socially responsible business? From what I have understood, one is define your company values, make sure training happens at all levels so that even the security guys know what the company values are. Adopt a business code of ethics and make sure everybody is aware of the business code of ethics. Commit to protecting the environment at all levels, from packaging to energy saving to water, conserving water at every level. Follow a training mandate for all levels of your team to ensure that they work together, that they grow together. Have a health and safety mandate for your team, and make sure your suppliers and vendors also, on board with you. And some of the factors in regarding to employee retention, or, keeping your team and keeping them happy. As a recruiter, I can say the main points are, yes, job security, compensation, relationship with manager, opportunities for career development, work-life balance, company culture, recognition, appreciation, job satisfaction. Now, these are the terminologies we always use. But from my personal experience, I can say which are the top 3. One is interesting work, challenging work. Youngsters need their mind to be engaged. You need to give them challenging work. And it's surprising to note that, it's not salary or compensation which is there right on the top. In fact, that could fall down to maybe number 3 or 4. Work-life balance with flexibility. And most importantly, recognition and acknowledgement continuously. So these are, few of the pointers which I'd like to share with you because of my experience in recruiting. Now, I'd like to just close my session with just, a few quotes, which I found was interesting. This is a quote by Stephen R. Covey. Strength lies in differences, not in similarities. Diversity is a mix. Inclusion is making the mix work, by Andrea Tapia. You don't have true freedom until you allow a diversity of opinion and diversity of voices, by Don Lemon. And the quote that I love the most, gender diversity is not just good for women, it is good for anyone who wants results. And this is a quote by Billie Jean. Billie Jean, I don't know if any of you all have heard about Billie Jean. There's a little story, behind her. She was supposed to be a very well-known tennis player. And she also is a social activist. And I think it was in the 1950s or something. She took on Bobby Riggs. Now, Bobby Riggs was the best player in the world at that point. And being a woman, it was unheard of that, women tennis player can beat a male tennis player. It was totally unheard of. But she took on that challenge. And that particular match was watched by more than 50 million people around the world. Okay? And she went on to win that match in straight sets. It was one of the easiest matches, according to her, that she has played. But anyway, but what she did for gender equality, because of the transformation, her action was not just about a tennis match. Why was it watched by 50 million people around the world? Because it was much more than that. Because what did she do for gender equality? Because after that, every child, every girl child wanted to be a Billie Jean. So imagine the transformative mindset of that one action. And I think it was in 2008 when Venus Williams, she negotiated, and she, for the first time, a woman got the same prize for Wimbledon. That means the fee. It was the first time in 2008 that a woman tennis player negotiated and got the same fee. So it was not just about the tennis per se, that it is about the transformative change in your mindset. So with this, I'd like to close. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Anisha. Smita Sharma, next. She is a seasoned professional in the field of corporate social responsibility and sustainability. I think making her qualified to speak today. She's based in Bangalore, Karnataka, and it's a career spanning several years. Smita has made significant contributions to various organizations. She's currently with the UST, and she focuses on CSR and sustainable activities. And prior to joining USTs, she was the head of programs at United Way, Bengaluru, where she successfully led and managed the impactful community-based initiatives for almost 3 years. Her expertise in CSR and sustainability extends beyond her time at United Way, as she has also worked as a senior manager and a manager in similar roles, driving positive social change within organizations. Her commitment to social responsibility is evident through her diverse experience in both corporate and non-profit sectors. She holds an executive education program certification in CSR from the Indian Institute of Corporate Affairs, complementing her education background in MSc Foods and Nutrition from Rajasthan Agricultural University. Look forward to hearing from you.
Good evening, everybody. Thank you, Mr. Bala, learned panelist, and very attentive audience after lunch. You can see nobody's on the phone, so it's making me a little nervous to keep you engaged. The topic came to us, prosperity beyond profit. 3 days before I got to know, I'm very happy that we are getting award for our CSR initiatives from Honorable Governor in TMA. Thank you, we got it yesterday. And after 2 days, I got to know that I'm the panel speaker also. And I was not prepared and I was ready. So prosperity beyond profit. And the topic is new era of responsible business under ESG framework. Now ESG has more than 4,400 milestones, indicators and all the things what to talk under the sun. That's not there, and it's a audience of all business people, and I am coming from a social sector. What to talk? Still, thanks to ChatGPT, I got some points to be, make it more simpler. But then, after morning sessions, Mr. Bala's session, Miss Anisha's session, all the points have already been ruled out because they've already been spoken. Now, from a social sector person taking care of CSR and practicing sustainability, because I'm part of ESG Council of the company as well, what to say as a second last speaker of the day in 10 minutes. So I zeroed down on that. Okay, I'll share my observations, my learnings, and my experiences with the audience. First observation, we have all, I think, forgotten COVID, but we have not forgotten the point that COVID was a boon for climate or environment, which we were very much realized when we were sitting at home. But now we are back to normal for the human beings, not for the environment. But it's my 6th or 7th summit or session or workshop on sustainability and CSR in last 1 year. And the first change I can see is this tag. Thanks to the association and the management team. Whenever I go to a session after COVID, I say that so much plastic tags, so many covers, so many that metal, and then where would you get it? Nobody is thinking. That's where the behavior change, Sir Balakumar, is coming. Yes, we have lost Some people have lost the business of that plastic tag and all, but some people also got the livelihood with that, right? And it's easy to recycle or whatever the point. That's where, sir, your behavior change is really coming. That what is the responsible means what I as a practitioner or as a learning person, I'll say that the consciousness what we are doing in our life and consciousness we have when we are representing the business, the impact of our a daily activity, a daily business on environment, on social, on governance. Anisa has already touched upon the governance part and everybody has touched upon the environment part. Both the parts are very easy to measure, a lot of attention is given, matrices are there, measurable points are there. I am rescuing the middle child, S. The middle child syndrome of the S, which is little vague. When people say, oh, some companies are doing very good with the CSR, they are doing something somewhere. And they are saying, oh, we are doing this, but that's not the point. Then what is the point? Where is this S lying? Most of the time, S is unmeasured. It gives the feel-good factor, the philanthropy to people who are doing business. The major learning working with the corporate in a S part or social part is integrating that S part. Right now, companies, we are struggling to integrate ESG in the business strategy, financial and non-financial reporting integration. S part where the intent lies, sir, the hard decision to take it. I would like to take one story of UST only because that's what I left with now in 5 minutes. The governance level decision of the company, the 2% of the hiring will come for the people who are differently abled. The women percentage is already there with the D&I certical, that okay, DEI also one part of the ESG, right? That percentage will be taken care by diversity and inclusion vertical. Now 2% of the people will be hired from differently abled community. Now who will take care? Call the CSR person. So when CSR person comes, working with all the accounts, P&L accounts, what is your requirement? What do you need? Then the person goes back to the NGO partners. Where are the people? What is their education qualification? What upskilling is required? And then we try to hire and put it there. So if you look at this one example, and mark my word, it is not easy. When you integrate that S part of 2% of governance level decision with the D&I, with the CSR person, getting into HR practices, your P&L account of each business client account, their upskilling, and then their retention, and then giving the performance, it requires the integration. And that's where the challenge lies. The integration comes with the, first of all, top-down method. Your intent is there or not. Your commitment is there or not. Your behavior change is not there or not to go beyond the compliance. So, with this question, I would like to reiterate the point when we have sessions on different, yes, this summit has given me that scale of understanding what is going on at international level, what is going in Japan, in China, and what are the Indian government is going to do. Yes, net zero and the environment-based standards and framework is in the process. Social stock exchange is there. But what an organization is struggling, what is organization responsibility in that framework? That is where the challenge lies, and that is where a practitioner of social sector, when it comes to the corporate and trying to fit in the ESG, the major challenge and where the gap to work on is the integration. And the integration comes, yes, from the balance of taking the decision that we are going beyond the profit or not, whether we are looking sustainability or not. And it's not only environment, yes, environment is very much important whether we do business or not. And very arrogant, I have learned from them, some people I would like to share that now the narrative has changed. They say not save the planet. Planet is very much capable of saving itself, save your own species, humans. Because we might not survive, planet will survive. So that's a new narrative and we should think and adapt to that narrative. Whatever we are doing for our own survival. So in our daily thing, very, very sophisticatedly and nicely we have moved from plastic bottles to glass bottle. We don't have any problem. We have moved to this tag. So this small that, I don't know whether you have read that book, Atomic Habits, a small change in one habit has changed a full supply chain. The governance level decision that whether we are giving business to our long-term vendor who is giving us profit rather than to a vendor who is with the people with the differently abled women. Are we taking that vendor into our value chain? So this one decision can make the overall skeleton of the decision and the business makes the whole difference. And that's where a person like social sector coming in corporate and understanding the responsibility of the business. I understand this topic from that point of view. Hopefully I'm able to share that with you. A good last point, I don't have any quote to give, but first question is that, are we conscious enough on daily basis in our life? Are we conscious enough in our business, or are we conscious enough for the society? Thank you. Thanks.
Thank you, Smita.
I hope I have taken less time.
Yes, you did take less time. So, the last speaker before we open up for questions is Xavier Lawrence, and he comes from an interesting background. He's from Kanyakumari. He comes from the Fisherman Folk Society, and he's interested in building products for the fishermen folk. He has 18 years experience in IT and has had various successful startups in USA, India and Singapore. He has a deep understanding of what the fisher folks need, and he mentioned that his concept is to go beyond profits. He tries to build in safety, sustainability and seafood traceability in all his products they developed.
So prosperity beyond profit and responsible business. And I think it's a very big concept, and first I want to start to tell my story, right? So I come from the fisherman background. I'm a boat owner. I have vessels that is operating from Kanyakumari to Kerala, Munampam. And I'm coming from IT background, so I have spent around 18 years. So I was traveling to US and I was traveling to Singapore doing a software consultant, right? So what happened is, like, when I come back hometown, I mean, fishing is my passion because my father was a fisherman and we owned a fishing vessel, right? So I used to go for fishing, and we go from the shore to 200 nautical miles in deep sea, where there is no network, there is no communication, you only see sea. And that's our problem. Because most of the time, when I have seen companies operating on the, what you call agriculture sector, you see the problem because you can see the farmer how he's working. But in our case, nobody sees what we are doing in deep sea, right? So that's where we come into the picture. So that's my story. So I thought, like, whenever I went there, I felt that it was not digitized. And there is a lot of traditional knowledge that we gathered from our previous generations, and it's all in book. So the first part that when I built it, my aim was to digitize the industry, because that's where it's going to have a huge impact in the marine industry. And unfortunately, most of the time, someone from outside to understand our industry is very, very complicated. It's very complex. So people coming from that background with the same technology and domain knowledge can really bring value, and that's what we are doing. So there are three areas like about this, what products we bring. See, when we started this company, we had made it clear, prosperity beyond profit. In the sense, our customer is fisherman, the value is given to them, then you build the product and you build it. So we put this culture of certain technology like safety, sustainability and traceability. These are the core three areas. We made it as part of the product because no fisherman will pay for the safety. No fisherman is going to pay for the sustainability. No fisherman is going for traceability. Now, who is going to pay for it? Are we going to create a separate product? It will never work. But the product has to have these features. That's what we did. So I'll give a small example how digitization in the marine sector, how empowering fishermen can make a huge impact. So a couple of months back, there was a ship accident, right? So in land, when there is an accident, you take a photographs. So you know exactly what happened. You have the evidence. But you see, no, nothing. It's hit and gone, right? So earlier what we used to do is then this fishermen go to that, shipping companies, the process so long and people have don't time. So it always ends up in a less advantage for us. But now with our technologies, like two months back, there was a ship accident. It happened. And this fisherman had data, the electronic navigation data, right? So what he did was he came back, he got into the community people, he shared the data on the cloud, telling that this is where my boat was hit, and this is the ship. Check his data. I'll tell you, within 25 days in India, the claim was settled. 40 lakhs was paid by the shipping company to the fisherman. So that's the power of data. And now what happens? When I see value by having my data to be shared, I want to have it. The fisherman comes to that. So in the morning we have said, I have to or I want to. So unless we create value to the communities that they're operating, they should come for I want, right? So that's where the changes takes place. Now that's a kind of called safety, right? Now another thing that we are talking about, because now a lot of ports are coming up, and it's going to be a challenge for us, especially because the navigation happens between the ships. So how do we enable, right? So that's going to be a challenge. And if you're giving a kind of gadget, it doesn't help us, right? So many gadgets, when doesn't add value to me, I'm not going to use it. So, right, how we build this culture is the product. So we come up with the concept of geofencing, right? So for me, the safety, and it's very important, we need to understand a generic product will not work, especially in the non-organized sector, right? Now we have a lot of theories, right? Like you give this gadget, it won't solve. What I need is technology that I understand as a fisherman, right? So we kind of geofencing areas, which means you don't have to give what you call a new gadget or app. It is part of it. We enable it. It helps them to navigate. That's one aspect of safety that we talk about. The second thing is sustainability. Now, who is responsible to handle sustainability? If you talk about sustainability, fishermen have no clue. They don't understand what the meaning of sustainability, and they are not going to give up their profits for the sake of sustainability. It's impossible. But how do we build it? And that's where we see the first part of any program is data, right? Data is very much needed. Now, sustainability is a part of work that community is involved, government is involved, and NGOs involved. And that's where, when the whole ecosystem comes in place, that is where you start getting this, the sustainability. But we start in a very small way, right? How the sustainability as part of the communities that we help. The first problem that we solved in a port, where there was a lot of issues between that, two different communities. So when you go for the sustainability, there is a lot of rules, like, protected areas that you are not supposed to fish, or these are the areas that you are not supposed to go. But how you give that information to the community is very important. So we did that. What we did is we never focused that we are going to give a solution of sustainability. What we did is it's a platform where you can build on, right? So what happened in the recent time is like last 4 years, these issues was resolved with the help of the fishery department. Saw our product being used by many fishermen. So they came to us, then they said, we have this problem, can you help? Yes, we did that. So successfully for 4 years, we executed it in a particular port. And the important thing is that there was a part of involvement from the community. See, you cannot do a sustainability or anything without enabling the community to be part of the ecosystem, right? So that's what we did for the concept of sustainability. Now, when it comes to traceability, right? And many of you know, like, where does your seafood come from? And it may not be a relevant question now, but it is becoming a serious issue for our industry. So, few years back, right, when I talked with some, seafood companies, like, do you understand, are you interested in implementing seafood traceability? He said, no, why should I do it? Like, and nobody cares, right? And there is no need for market. But now, when we ask them, are you interested? Yes. Reason? Because the lot of governments, right, the US government, the European governments, a lot of governments are putting regulations. And unfortunately, we are lagging behind. And the reason is that there is not solution that is solving the problem of community, right? So what happened is that, we have different ecosystem. One is fishery department, and another is NGO, and another is like MPEDA, or everybody wants to have solve their own problem, right? If fishery department means, okay, I want to track where he's going. MPEDA means I want to know the seafood traceability data, right? So that will not work. So ecosystem in the sense, it has to benefit the community, and then it will bring the solution there. So traceability is something that we are working on. We see there is a lot of interest coming up, and our technology is aligned for that. Now, as a company, we may not make profit now on sustainability or traceability, but we do see there is a big scope. There is a scope that building your products based on real solving the problem and keeping in mind that who is your customer? Our customer is fishermen, and if we solve their problem, obviously they have been digitized. They will be entering into the digital platform, which will solve all the complexity around this area. And that is what we hope for. Thank you.
It's interesting that you asked this question because Federal Bank actually is probably the first bank in the country which has consciously taken on a green agenda. And this has happened over the last 2-3 years. And in the board, there were several discussions about this. So it is a gradual movement towards it. And actually in the process of taking that, of discussing the subject, we encountered all the points which I mentioned. All those conflicts, all those trade-offs, and all those questions and fears which happen in the minds of corporate managers. So sitting as an independent director on a board of, whether it's of a bank or any company, it's the easy part is to ask the question. But the operations people have to do this difficult task of balancing business with achieving these kind of outcomes. So that journey was quite interesting. It has just started, actually. And, as you can imagine, for a bank, it's going to be very complicated because, it's going to be complex. Not complicated, the wrong word, complex. But these are solvable problems. Only thing is a lot of processes within the bank have to change, which brings me back to, I think I want to tie it back rather than dwell on what happened in the bank. What we encountered illustrated very well that the real difficulty is asking those questions and finding the answers within the organization. How much are we, the management, prepared to, put our checkbook where our mouth is, in the sense that it's very easy to make statements, vision statements, mission statements, etc. But when it comes to signing the check, then suddenly everybody gets very upset when they see some big numbers which have to be, in terms of either loss of top line, loss of bottom line. So, the change, the point which I tried to make in my presentation is that the journey has to be gone through within the organization and within the management teams. And then once those basic questions have been raised and asked, then it should percolate down through the entire organization. So it is, this will necessarily be a top-down process because the coin has to drop in the mind of the top people because they are the part of the problem. See, the management is part of the problem always, isn't it? In any organization, at the end of the day, who is the one who's going to be thumping the table and saying, but where are the profits and what happened to them? Why have sales dropped, etc. It is the top management which is going to be making that noise. So unless the change happens there, a lot of this talk down the line will be just tinkering. So our experience has been that this is not an easy road to walk. It is a very difficult choice to make. but as I gave the example of various very well-known organizations which are respected all over the world, like Patagonia and IKEA and Siemens and Unilever and all. These are very large companies which are long-term players and who are also mindful of things like shareholder returns and stock market sensitivities and analysts' sentiments and all that. They are very much concerned about all that. But yet they have chosen to take these decisions. And the management has the guts and I would say, the grit and the confidence to stand up before shareholders and explain why they took a choice that they preferred to opt for a lower rate of growth for a period of time because that meant that their business would be more responsible. See, I think there's one other point which I want to make is the justification or the reason why we should go for and give more importance to ESG is not because it will beneficially affect the bottom line. I think that's very important for me to clarify that even if it adversely affects the bottom line, it is a choice which we have to make. Even if we do that. If it beneficially affects the bottom line, that's pure luck. But otherwise, it is not necessarily going to, it means tougher choices. For example, like what IKEA is doing, they have to find recycled materials, different ways of doing the same thing which they can easily do, continuing their existing processes. So I just want to return again and again to the same point that people, planet and profit, this balancing act is first to be done inside our minds. I think that's the basic message.
If I may be permitted to argue that not only fishermen, but even companies will continue to, they will not want to give up profits and they will continue to seek growth and those normal metrics until they are forced by external forces to think otherwise, by the society and by individual consumers who want a different version of the world, which those kind of things shaping up. Similarly, governments who supposedly represent those people also imposing certain conditions on them. So is that what going to drive the sustainability and all those agendas, or will companies really change internally? I just wanted anyone on the August panel to respond.
Consumers or the customers have ensured that the company changes. There are times like what he mentioned about, Balagopal mentioned about Federal Bank, where the board has decided that they will change. There will be cases where the government will insist on laws and regulations where it will change. So I guess a matter of all factors come into play, and that's when the change will happen. And I don't think it's going to be one particular element which will change the organizations. It's going to be a mix of things which has to happen, because there is always different strokes for different folks. So different people will behave differently.
Say many of the rules which led to, or many of the forces which led to some business practices which we follow today, I think we've forgotten. The 8-hour day, or banning of child labor, or so many things about working conditions were achieved after a century of working class struggle. These were not just voluntarily given by business. So, like some wise man said about middle class morality. What is middle class morality? The answer was, it is lack of opportunity. So if you don't put certain constraints and restrictions on business, only a very sanguine person will say that no, business will all transform and will change for the better. It has never, in its history, it has never changed like that. Because the drive for profit is so strong, and the drive for surplus. So therefore, in the sense, I think the initiative is going to come from the state. I mean, the state meaning the government. And this is happening in various countries, various parts of the world. There is, of course, a very strong pushback by the business community and their lobbies also, which are very powerful, and business interests. So even in Western countries, you have seen in the US, for instance, how shale oil drilling was, under one administration it was stopped, and then the moment the administration changed and the Republicans came, it was promptly allowed again, and then now again it has. So these are things which are very political subjects, which indicates that these are contested areas. So even if it is granted that yes, damage to the environment is not a good thing, and that there is a need to curb certain kind of practices, the means to achieving that, that is a political question, and about which there is a lot of contestation which is going on even today. But I agree with you. I think going by the evidence, unless this is enforced by the government through by bringing in laws, stricter laws and rules regarding emissions and discharging effluents into water sources and rivers and etc. Unless those things get stricter and stricter, I don't think you're going to find very much a voluntary. I'm not that sanguine that business is going to voluntarily give up current profit for future paradise.
I have a question. I just want to add one point to that. We feel very good that, okay, we want to go beyond compliance. It is not practical, usually, if you go. I'll take the example of 2% of CSR law. There are many organizations, companies, we have examples, they were doing good for the people beyond the business and all. But 2% brings maximum companies under that criteria. First, it's a compliance. Second year, it's a, okay, somehow do, let's not get the penalty. Third, they want to, spend it well. Fourth year, auditors are asking question. Fifth year, board is asking where is the impact. So that's where we can see from compliance to behavior also it helps, which I have seen as a social sector when we were dependent on the donations. It was only donations earlier, right, in the social sector. And when CSR comes, they say, oh, it's just a compliance. Nobody knows, you just give it here. In 6th or 7th, which year? 10th year now, of to the 9th year of 2013. Now board is asking, every board asking, where is the impact? Go beyond the compliance, go beyond the, so I think compliance gives that phase. Now the same thing, I think I should not tell this in the platform, but most of us who are committing net zero are struggling with this carbon calculation, carbon assessment. What is it going on, everybody? And we are waiting for the Indian government coming out of the standard framework and the rules and regulations. So which gives some path to that. So yes, we should not deny that feel-good factor is always good, but compliance gives that path or direction to at least to us to go do it. Thank you.
Which you never answered, that regarding the mandated number of women directors. It is enforced, but as you said, is it because of a glass ceiling or is it because of a reluctance? Is there an answer to this bare minimum compliance syndrome? I mean, why don't they go beyond? Like you said, it's only 13% compliance in India, whereas in globally it is 20%.
No, what I said was, earlier in India it was 6%, and when 2013, when it became a mandate to have one woman director, it went up to 18%. So it was because of a mandate. Otherwise, I doubt that percentage would have ever increased. Okay, the global is 20%. So that's the global ratio. In 2014, SEBI had again given a mandate that there should be a woman independent director. Okay. Then at that point, companies again started scrambling for, wherever they can find, women to bring in as directors.
But again, they were looking at women who've had previous experience in the board. So that's a small pool of women, very small pool of women, and those women were given all the opportunities to become directors. But that's what in reality happened. It's like, a fresher going for a job and the recruiter says, you don't have any experience.
That's exactly why I asked this question, because I am now empaneled by the NCA and it's been quite some time, and I'm seeing this hesitance, because I really can't understand what is the hesitancy they have, because all the qualifications are there, including the previous, experience as a director. But I'm seeing that reluctance when it comes to a woman. You asked, you have correctly identified, but I do not find that you have any answer or any indication of what is this hesitancy about. Okay, I can understand about the lack of experience. We live in this world of patriarchy, and the patriarchy, the question we need to ask ourselves, is it so strong that we cannot break this shackles of patriarchy? Figures, that's what I was saying. I was quite shocked, because when I was going through the figures, even when we are talking about 87% of companies run by women have got above average profits. But if you look at the total 500 numbers, it's only 39 CEOs. But then the question is, why does this keep repeating itself? It's repeating itself again and again. So what do we need to do? How do we uncondition our minds? Right now, it's social conditioning. And let me say that both men and women propagated this patriarchy. So, it's both the genders who are to be blamed for propagating this, but for how long? And when do we change this mindset? So these are questions, I'm sorry, I don't have real answers for this. Thank you.
The question is to Smita Sharma. You mentioned, I think, something about a social stock exchange.
Yes, sir.
I've never heard about it. Could you tell us what this is, and is it something which is actually functioning?
Honorable Finance Minister Nirmala Sitharaman notified in our finance session. Social stock exchange is a tool just like our normal national stock exchange have been run in other countries. India is also adopting, other than CSR, to get more open funding, philanthropic funding in the social sector to achieve our SDGs. So there will be NGOs partners only. Only NGO organization can register themselves after the audit from the certified organization from the government. There's a core committee working at national level. I attended that session in Delhi. They are working on the guidelines as per the SEBI rules. It will be under SEBI rules, guidelines, how it will be done. UK and other countries have, Singapore, and have actually experimented on that, and India is on that path. It has been notified by Finance Minister, and it is growing. It is actually being expedited very fast in India, because we are, as morning somebody said, that we are at 121 in SDG, and it's an investment for SDGs, that gap funding from philanthropy. But you know that how philanthropy works in India, so they try to regulate it. CSR is out of that right now. That's the information, because the CSR already has its own regulation. That's the brief about it. We can connect offline also on that.
We are talking about, this lady was talking about directorship. Is it equal pay now or not for the gender, two different genders? There was always an issue. The ladies get lower.
Now, I don't have the answer for that for directors. Bala, would you be able to answer that? Is it equal pay for directors? No idea. It would be like blatant open discrimination. I doubt companies will, do that.
But there's a lot of it worldwide.
You mean for the for jobs? Definitely. That is worldwide, and there is a big parity in terms of salaries for men and women. So that is, disparity between salaries for men and women. That is there. Yeah. But for directors, I doubt it, because that would be too blatant.
You said about this real-time tracking of seafood. Is it based on blockchain technology or?
No, I think what we do is we provide the first set of data in the blockchain, right? So for example, there are a lot of companies operating on from the land to the plate, right? There are two concepts, sea to the shore, shore to the plate. So we operate from sea to the shore. So we provide the first data set in the blockchain, and that can be integrated with multiple ERP systems.
Thank you. I think we are running out of time now. So we're closing this for now. Any other questions? I think most of us are going to be here for the next session, or in the tea, you can please ask those questions at that time. Thank you very much. Thank you all. Thank you.
Thank you all. May I request Mr. R.A.D. Pillai, TMA member, to kindly hand over a memento to Mr. Raj Karadi, who's been the moderator for the session, as a token of gratitude. May I request Mr. Sunil Kumar, past Secretary TMA and AGM Adani, to hand over the memento to Mr. C. Balagopal. I would like to request Mr. Srikanth, past Secretary Committee Chairperson, to hand over the memento as a token of gratitude to Ms. Anisha Charia. Let me request Dr. Sunita Chandran, TMA member and manager BD of Sri Chitra Tirunal Institute of Medical Sciences, to hand over the memento to Ms. Smita Sharma as a token of gratitude. I would like to request Dr. K.G. Satish Kumar, Distinguished Visiting Professor of Digital University, Kerala, to kindly hand over the memento as a token of gratitude to Mr. Xavier Lawrence.
Thank you. That was a wonderful session. Thank you very much, moderator, Mr. Raj Karadi, keyboard speaker, Mr. Balagopal, and all the panelists.